Hey everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm joined by Natalie.
Hi.
And Natalie is in a Netflix show called My Unorthodox Life. I was so surprised because I was watching the show with my girlfriend, and then we saw there was a Swedish girl in this show living in America. I was like,
Yeah.
I need to reach out to this girl and I want to hear more about her experience, because I'm always talking about like the American in Sweden perspective, but now we've got like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Could you maybe tell everybody a bit of like your backstory, how you ended up in the US?
Yeah, so I grew up in Stockholm my entire life. Played a lot of tennis, a little bit professionally when I was younger. And then once I was done with school here, I really wanted to move somewhere but keep studying. So I used tennis that way, and I applied for a few schools in the States and ended up getting a full ride basically for playing tennis in their team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good, because college in the US is
It's
not
really
cheap.
freaking expensive. So I mean, without the tennis paying for it, I couldn't have gone.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's crazy. Guys, I have one Swedish friend who was like paying for college in the US. I'm like, why would you pay taxes in Sweden all this time and then not actually?
No, it's actually pretty crazy. I mean, it definitely ended up being more expensive anyways, being there, paying for rent and just like living, but definitely worth it for me.
So was there anything like when you first came to the US, where in the US were you? Then like maybe talk a little bit about like what was like surprising for you? Like what did you not expect?
So I actually, when I was applying for schools or coaches were reaching out to me, I had a few in Florida, a few like mid-America, and then there was one school in Texas, and I had been on vacation in Florida a few times with my family, so I didn't want to go that classic route of going either West or East Coast. So I decided I was going to go to in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
Wow.
It was like an insane culture shock. I remember my dad dropping me off there when we were going, and it was just like we drove an hour from the airport. We was just like surrounded by like farms, cows. It was just like in the middle of nowhere, and he was like scared to drop me off there. Especially being from Stockholm, I haven't really lived anywhere outside of a city ever.
Yeah, for sure.
So
was there anything like surprising about like people? I guess like when you go to college, there's people from everywhere, but like was there any like cultural things that stood out about like the people that you met when you got there?
So the people in my team were the ones I hung out with the most, and they were all a lot of internationals. So a lot of Europeans. So we were kind of similar from there and bonded a lot over that. But the Americans in Texas were very, they wore a cowboy hat, cowboy boots. They had like this cowboy country accent.
Okay.
So I was in like a super shock because I didn't think, everyone was like, oh my God, you have to buy a hat when you go there and get your boots. And I was like, guys, like it's 2020, like let's chill. But everyone actually wore a hat and boots.
So did you adjust to it over time? Did you ever get like a cowboy hat and boots when you were living
I was
there?
very against it. I never got anything actually.
Really? Wow.
No, I really didn't get anything. And I think I made fun of everyone all the time.
I will say Swedish people have pretty good style. Like when I first moved here, people made fun of me for like wearing baggy clothes or like I was that guy in high school that was wearing like basketball shorts every day because I was like an athlete, you know.
That's so
and then
funny.
I moved here and all the guys are like dressed so nice, and I'm like, wow.
Actually, in school, I was like, my first week in school, I was wearing like just jeans, a shirt, maybe a skirt because it was really warm there. And then after a week, I was like, everyone's wearing Crocs and like their pajamas to class. And I was like, what are we doing here? Like I would never have gone like that to school here in Sweden.
Yeah, I still have this little part of Americanness in me, because like if I have to go to like the grocery store and I'm wearing like sweats at home, I'm like, all right, screw it, like I'll go. But then I still feel like more subconscious here in the middle of Stockholm doing that than I would like probably in Texas.
Right. I mean, I do kind of like it. After a while, I adapted and I just wore like leggings and a shirt, and I was like, it was so nice.
Yeah.
But still, it was like they barely have to own jeans because they only wore sweats to class.
So what did you think of like the college experience in the US? Like you maybe see things in movies, or like I went through like the Greek system in college where I went from, but then I also saw like how the college is like really different, and they have like the festerie and stuff in Sweden. What were like some cool aspects of the college life there?
So I did 2 years in Texas, and then I didn't like it that much, so I transferred and did my last 2 years in New York. Those two experiences were complete differences. In Texas, it was this this college vibe that you see on movies more. We went to some frat parties. We had these clubs or bars that were close to school. We weren't supposed to drink though, because we were under 21. But you know,
what happens in college stays in college.
Right. Let's not dive deeper in that. And then when I moved to New York, it was this. It was like a city school, so there was no frat sororities. Everyone kind of just did their own thing. Went to school, went home, and hung out with their friends around school. So I definitely think if a Swedish person goes to America, it is fun to go to like this real college experience, because it really is something. If they would just go to New York instead of skipping the first part, you don't really get it, I'd say.
Yeah, that's so true, because like in my home state, Washington, there's like two state schools that are like completely different vibes. One is like in the big city in Seattle, and people like go home to their parents on the weekends, and like I guess
they live home.
The party days are like Tuesday and Thursday there. And then where I decided to go, I wanted like the real college experience. So it was like in the middle of nowhere, like wheat fields for an hour in every direction, and like people just go there and they partied like crazy, and they had like the full like college experience, but I wanted that like aspect. So so you're done with school.
I'm done with school.
So how does that process look for you? Like if you wanted to stay in the US, like a lot of people in Sweden that are Swedes that watch my channel, they're like, how do I move to US? I'm like, I don't know how to do that, because I'm American. I've never had to. I could tell you how to move to Sweden, but the other way, I'm not really sure.
So if you go and study for college, it's way easier. You'll get a visa pretty fast, and it lasts for about 5 years. So I had now 4 years of a student visa, and then after you're done, you get to work a year within what you majored in. Okay. So I majored in business, so now I'm working in sales at a company in New York.
Nice.
After that, it's a little tricky. I think it's in most recent years they switched up the rules. So when you apply and you get a sponsorship from the company you're at, even if they sponsor you, it's only a 30% chance that you get that work visa. So it kind of, they even call it the work visa lottery, because it's just 30%.
That's crazy. So even if a company likes you, they're like, we want this person, you still only have a 30% chance of actually staying?
I am entering the lottery in March, I think, and I get the results in April.
Wow.
And if I don't get it, I'm pretty much shot, and I'm gonna definitely come home here.
That's crazy. Yeah. So that seems like it's way harder to get into the US than in Sweden for that example, because like here, if you have a job and like your employer wants to keep you, like you're basically going to stay as long as you meet like the requirements of like insurance and minimum salaries and all that kind of stuff. Right.
I'm not too sure of Swedish rules, but like that sounds way easier. I know also for me, when I was applying for jobs, it was really hard to get them, because all the employers, they're aware of this, so they don't want to employ you, because they'll train you, they'll teach you instead of hiring an American, and then it's a 70% chance I'm going home anyways. So.
That's crazy.
Yes, it's a pretty tough process. I know it changed like 4 years ago, so it's pretty recent too.
Wow. Yeah, because one of my friends, she was studying in the US, and it must have been the same thing for her, because she had a job and everything, and then all of a sudden she just got married out of nowhere. I'm like, well, she got married and she like barely knows this guy, but I guess it was
honestly,
like so she could stay.
Honestly, it's the easiest like way.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you gotta love the person, but it's definitely the simplest way of getting around everything, because if I get this visa now, I'm still kind of stuck with my company, and I can't really make money any other way than with that company. So it's still like a lot of boundaries around that's, you know, makes you feel like you're kind of stuck. But
so you can't like start your own business while you're on a work visa, for example?
No, then my work visa would have to change somehow. And
wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty long process.
This was something I had happen to me, because I had applied for an entrepreneur visa in Sweden.
Okay.
And then I got offered a job like 6 months later, so I applied for a work visa in addition to that. And then when they like wanted to make a decision, they were like, okay, we have 2 permits. We can only choose one. And I was like, well, what do I do? And they're like, well, if you choose the entrepreneur visa, you can only work as an entrepreneur. You can't take a job. But if you get the work visa, then you can also have your own business on the side. So I was like, well, then why are you even asking me? Just take the one where I can do both. Like.
Right. Well, so there is one where you can do both, though.
Yeah. So as long as you have like a work permit and you're like employed, then you can still like have your own like independent contractor
so you want both
or whatever. Yeah.
I don't think I mean, there is for sure some visas like that in America, but I think it just takes. I think you just need your green card to do that, and that comes like way later.
So like in your ideal world, like if we just like put off all of like the visa stuff and not worry about like the actual logistics, could you see yourself living in the U.S. long term, or would you want to like build your life in Sweden? Like what does that feel like for you?
I can definitely see myself living in the U.S. long term. I think that's what I would. If no visa, no nothing, that's what I would want to do. But then it's also like worth putting in there that I'm living in New York City, and that's like this. I think it's the state or city that's the closest mindset to Europe.
Yeah, it's so international because everybody's from somewhere else in New York. It feels like.
So like I couldn't have stayed in Texas and lived there. Then I'd rather go home to Stockholm. So I would be very picky with where in the U.S. It would have to be like Boston, Chicago, New York.
Yeah.
A few of those.
True. I love New York. Like there's something about the energy of everyone's hustling and grinding and like walking fast and like doing things, and like Stockholm has that like a tiny bit. Like my first year in Sweden, I was in Norrköping and people were just like walking so slow everywhere. I'm like, come on guys, I got things to do. Like let's go.
That's actually so funny. Yeah, no, it's definitely a really fun energy. Always so much to do. You can never be bored. Even when you come there and you don't have a lot of friends, you can literally just go around the corner to a bar and you'll meet so many people.
Yeah, that's something I don't think I've ever done in Sweden, just like go to a bar by myself. It's harder to start small talk conversations with people here in the US. You just like find yourself talking to random strangers without even like realizing it. But a lot of my Swedish friends, they feel like when they go abroad, they sort of like, it opens up another aspect of their personality, right? Like they're just like more outgoing and talking to strangers and stuff. And then like one of my best friends, Caroline, like she was traveling all through Asia. And then the first time I ever met her, she like just came back to Sweden from being abroad for months. And she was so outgoing and talking to everybody. Right. And then she was just telling me the other day, she's like, I feel so shy and reserved because it's been like several years since I've been like outside of Sweden.
That's funny.
She's been in like her bubble.
I definitely thought when I was in Sweden that I was more of an introvert, just because of how we are. And then after being in the US for like just a year, I came home and my friends were like, oh my God, you talk a lot. I was like, I guess that comes with it, you know?
Yeah, it's sort of like a natural thing. And also it's interesting, I always thought I was an introvert in the US, but then coming to Sweden when everyone else is a little bit more reserved, everybody thinks like I'm the extrovert all of a sudden. I'm like, guys, I'm not an extrovert.
That makes a lot of sense.
I just seem like one here. But I also think there's something to be said of like being an international person. Like people are naturally curious about you. Like
definitely.
It was the same for when I was dating a Swedish girl in the US. Everyone was like, oh, you're from Sweden. And they're like naturally very, very curious about like what that's like. And then we came back to Sweden and it was the opposite. And everybody was like, oh, you're American. What's that like? And she was just like one of the Swedes.
Yeah, no, definitely you get a lot of questions asked. A lot of what's the differences, but mostly people confuse us with Switzerland so often.
Oh yeah.
That they always ask like, oh my God, I heard your cheese is great and your mountains. And I'm like, I think you're thinking of Switzerland. It's like up, you know. It's
funny how people mix those two up. Last time
all the time
I was in the US, we walked around the streets of LA asking people, Americans, what they thought about Sweden. And it was the same like what you were saying. It was like, oh, the chocolate, the mountains, the cheese. And it was like, Malibu's pretty good.
Right.
You know, best of all things.
I know our chocolate is good, but no, it's like it's just a lot of Americans don't travel outside of the US, especially when I was in Texas. Very few had traveled. So they are honestly not that good at geography. Yeah,
it's crazy. Like these Jimmy Kimmel skits where they're like, point to North Korea, and they're like pointing at Greenland.
Right, so that's kind of them. They're like Sweden, you know?
Well, Americans, a lot of times, they're like, oh, America is the best country ever. Right. But then you're like, have you been to any other countries? They're just like, no, but we're still the best. It's like, how can you say that until you've like seen other places? Like,
a lot of Americans that I meet that have traveled a lot actually don't want to be in America as much anymore. They're very like, oh, I'd go to Europe, I'll go there. So,
one of the biggest things that I love about Europe is like how you have so many cultures in like a small place. Like I can take a flight for 1 or 2 hours and it's like a different language, different kind of people, different climate, like everything is just different. And I love like learning new languages, seeing new things, doing all this. In Europe you have so much, whereas where I'm from, I could take a flight 2 hours to LA and it's like, well, everybody's speaking the same language. It's just a little sunnier and people are making me happier.
Totally.
That's it.
People are happier.
Yeah.
That's funny. No, totally.
So a couple last questions. I'm curious about what it was like being on Netflix. I think you're the first person I've met that's been on a Netflix show, I'm pretty sure. So what was that like experience, like being in like where the cameras everywhere and people like asking you like interview questions on the side, like how does that process
right it was definitely a really fun, different experience. I was super nervous before because wasn't a big person like social media or anything at all, and then suddenly I was having 5 cameras filming me when I was waking up in the morning. Wow. Like pretty much naked, so it's definitely a big
just like trust the editors, like no naked
right. I was like, you guys are taking this out, right? Right. Yeah. But what helped, so my ex-girlfriend and her family were super comfortable with it because it was their season number 2, so that kind of made it better. They were so like relaxed and calm, so kind of made me ease into it a little bit more. But for definitely the first like 1 or 2 episodes, I was like freaking out every time the camera was there. I was like, try to be cool, like no hand sweat, like. But it was definitely pretty crazy.
I could imagine
to
how
begin with.
Much of an adjustment that would be.
Right.
Do the producers ever like try to set up the situations in like certain ways? A lot of times when you watch reality TV, it's like there's no way this happened like naturally. Like there's people behind the scenes like making it happen. Like. So
everything that happened was actually super real and super like, every time like they have never told us anything. The cameras were just rolling and I don't know, suddenly I start crying because of the visa situation and also in this season so much just happened that we weren't expecting, like her mom's divorce, literally out of the blue craziness that just like were thrown at us. So even if we had a schedule of like today we're going on a date there, like we canceled most of the things and just like rolled the cameras because everything that was going on was pretty crazy.
For sure. I have to say, I really enjoyed the show. I didn't see the first season, but my girlfriend put the second season on, and I was like, I started off working, and then like gradually like started paying more and more attention to what was going on in the show, and like got sort of hooked into it. But I guess the last question I have for you is like, what happened with Miriam? I see you guys are not together anymore. Like, do you have like the story behind that?
So. It's kind of a lot of pressure on a relationship, I think, being filmed all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we filmed for a while and just you spend a lot of time together, you like dig in emotions, and I kind of freaked out every now and then, like, shit, this is going on camera, it's just a lot of things going on. And then she had a lot of family things with her mom's divorce, and we were figuring things out, and so when we stopped filming, it took a little while, and then we basically figured out that it was just going to be better if we were friends. She also studies in California, and I wasn't going to move there, so it was a part of, I'd done long distance in the past, and it was just not going to be it for us.
For sure.
So we just decided we're going to stay friends, but we've been pretty successful with that. So we're following the lesbian stereotypes of staying friends. After.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm more friends with people that I dated in Sweden than like I don't have any contact with like the girls.
I feel like that's rare though. Like I don't have any friends like that are friends with their old boyfriends.
I don't know. Maybe it's just like...
Maybe you're just the American-friendly guy,
Maybe. Or maybe just like once you've had this like cross-cultural like experience in some way, and you feel like they're still a friend even if it's not meant to be like that way. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, good job.
Yeah. So honestly, where can people follow you?
So my Instagram is Nathalie Ulander, just my first last name.
We'll put it down below in the description. Yeah. Thanks for joining today.
It was so much fun to be here. Thank you.
For sure. See you guys later.